And so there's this like tiny sliver of the world that has outsized power and defines this is what success looks like. And so in our society, everybody is trying to fit these super narrow standards. But then we have the different pressures within, whatever corner of society you're in yoga and, running.
The big question is this: how do we take a seemingly ordinary world and make it beyond extraordinary? In yoga, there is so much more than meets the eye, and it's not just the things we do on our yoga mats that make the biggest difference. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. My name is Austin Bitsis, and welcome to Life as a Secret Yogi. Elizabeth, welcome to the Life as a Secret Yogi show. Super grateful to have you on the show, and thanks for hopping on.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate the time. And for everyone who doesn't know Elizabeth Carey, she is a strategic communicator with her tool being the written word. So you guessed it, she is a writer, editor, and co-author of her book, Girls Running, All You Need to Strive, Thrive, and Run Your Best, which you may recognize from our interview a few episodes back with Melody Fairchild, the professional distance runner and now coach. Elizabeth is also a running coach herself and an ultra marathoner as well. So she is a big part of the running community, and Elizabeth's articles have been featured in the New York Times, Runner's World, and other major running blogs. If you're a fellow runner like myself, you are definitely familiar with some of them, such as Podium Runner, Stat, and so on. She focuses a lot of her work around the mission of speaking about those taboo topics that plague a lot of female runners, such as eating disorders, body image, and female cycles. At this point, you may be thinking, what does this even have to do with yoga or the topic of this show? Well, it has everything to do with it, because a lot of the topics, Elizabeth, you talk about in your articles are not just limited to runners or even just females. Eating disorders, body image, among other things, we will talk about span across nearly every discipline. And further, yoga is or has been a big part of Elizabeth's practice and life from very early on, which she will talk about more. So bringing awareness and solutions to these issues is one way Elizabeth is truly embodying her inner secret yogi by using the tools of yoga off her mat. So I'm super excited to have yourself, Elizabeth, on this show to hear your life as a secret yogi and discuss the topics that I just mentioned a little bit further. But before we jump in, a little bit about the audience of this show. The audience of the show wants to take the practice of yoga, meditation, breath work, energy work, animal-assisted therapy, among other related tools into the real world. It's a lot of people who are looking to perform at a higher level in other disciplines such as running, golf, surfing, weightlifting, freediving, basketball, art, music, entrepreneurship, and the list goes on. Or simply those who just want to make life beautiful. The audience does not necessarily have a desire to become the stereotypical yogi or yoga teacher. Nevertheless, the audience would like to utilize the tools of yoga, meditation, and these other related practices to make life beautiful. And in short, this message of the secret yogi is that we all have this heroic self. It's our inner source that we cultivate through the tools of yoga, meditation, breath work, animal assisted therapy, and these related practices to make a seemingly ordinary world extraordinary. It's that we all have this superhero that lives within, and these practices allow us to tap into our quote, quote, superpowers. Our superpowers being mindfulness, awareness, love, focus, and creating happiness from within, to just list a few, and ultimately just feel good in a body that we love. So we really hope that this episode helps you unlock your own superpowers through yoga and these other related tools that we talk about. And if you like this episode and any other episode, make sure to share it with at least one person that needs it most. And please leave a written review and rating wherever you're listening to right now. So, Elizabeth, thanks so much. And let's just start off with your story, like kind of how you got into writing about these topics. What part has yoga played in your life, in your day to day, and your running and your writing?
Yeah, I feel like yoga has been a huge part of my journey as a runner and a writer from the very outset. I was super lucky to have a coach in high school who was really into yoga. And in fact, he would have our track and cross country teams do sun salutations as part of our warm up. So we were this team dressed in our green and gold, and we would stand in a circle and do sun salutations. So we really stood out at invitationals. Not everybody was doing that at the time, but he also introduced me to traditional hot yoga and incorporated that in my training from the outset. So I started running when I was 14, and instantly yoga was a part of that for me. And like running and like writing, it's just been a presence in my life since then. There's these ribbons or rivers that kind of run through different people's lives. And for me, running, writing, and yoga have just always been there. They might look different, they might take different forms, they might serve different purposes at different points in my life, but I feel so lucky that I've been able to tap into them again and again. And so obviously my running is something that I've written about, and I'm passionate about both of those practices. And so I think feel really, really grateful at this point in my life, in my, oh gosh, getting into my upper 30s now, where I'm actually at a point where I have this privilege and ability to write about these topics that I love, that I'm passionate about. And so it's a really, really cool spot to be at right now.
Awesome. Yeah. And it's super unique that you kind of found yoga early on, because a lot of people, including myself, kind of find it by chance later on in their life when it's like, it's that they need it most maybe, but you kind of found it like early on and it's been able to follow along your journey. So that's like super unique and awesome too. I mean, you must have so much like important kind of lessons that yoga maybe has taught you like throughout your journey. Is there any particular things that you've kind of found that maybe you've integrated, either maybe like consciously or even unconsciously into your writing and running?
Yeah, I think definitely the biggest impact that yoga has had is just helping me be present and aware, and connecting me to my breath, which is right now. And I think, especially as a young person, and even now, I'm still recovering from perfectionism, and I was super competitive and super driven, and I got really nervous and just had a lot of struggles with different pressures that I was facing. And yoga helped me deal with all of that. But being mindful and being present really helps me write my best. It helps me run my best. And it also helps me just enjoy where I'm at, no matter what I'm facing. So I found that as a coach as well, it's really helpful for my athletes. It's often the last thing that we want to do. Like today, perfect example. I was thinking of my to do list, I was running through everything and feeling kind of frenzied and anxious. And the last thing that I wanted to do was any sort of like sitting still or breathing, but I've been putting it off for a couple of weeks. And I knew that I just had to fight the brain that was telling me to do and go. And I did some yin, and that was exactly what I needed. I'm not going to say it was comfortable. I'm not going to say that it was relaxing for the first 30 minutes, but after that, I was able to just get my mind and my body into a better place. And I think that is so helpful, especially during the trying times that the world's going through right now. It's a gift to be able to take that time and do that. But I definitely find that it helps me bring my best self to whatever I'm up to.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that idea of perfectionism and like undue pressure that we put on ourselves is like, I mean, we're not alone in saying that we're perfectionists. I know myself, like highly consider myself a perfectionist, and and that's like kind of one of my questions about one of your articles, which we'll unpack in a little while. But I kind of want to dive down this route of maybe your particular yoga practice a little bit more. Like you said, you did some yin and you needed it. You're putting it off for a while, and I know same thing. It's like I do this, I do that too. It's like I go for the more physical practices and or like I go for the run or the harder workout rather than some of the stuff that I probably need most, or I do need most, which is like the yin, the restorative, the meditation. And I'm just like, put it off. You know what? And sometimes it only takes like 10 minutes. Or for a yin practice, I mean, you do it before bed and it helps you actually sleep better. So it's actually more time effective. So can you tell us a little bit more about maybe some specific tools that from your own yoga practice you've utilized to perform as a runner, maybe if you have some writer's block, or just like you said, like you have a lot of big to-do lists and it's like, maybe my body doesn't want this, but this is what my body needs. So like any specific tools that you used?
Yeah, definitely. So the yin right now at this point in my life has been super powerful, just like I mentioned, for getting me in a better spot. But early in my running career, it was so helpful for combating my nerves, or at least dealing with my nerves, and also visualization. So just having a practice that involves breath work helped me relax enough and get my mind to a place where I could do a lot of visualization ahead of big races, ahead of big championship meets. That's something that my co-author Melody Fairchild also taps into a lot. And so when I've been working with her, we practiced a lot of those different types of breathing styles, different types of meditations, and then also walking young athletes through visualization so that they're prepared for anything, but also just stepping on the line with the utmost confidence and calmness. And then another big part of it for me has been helping me find recovery from the food and body issues that I was facing. In college, I definitely dealt with disordered eating and beyond that as well, and some compulsive exercise behaviors. And I always felt pretty uncomfortable in my own skin. And so practicing yoga helped me form a stronger relationship with my body and respect my body and trust my body. And that's something that I, again, work with my athletes on, because it's such a powerful tool for helping us hone our intuition, helping us listen to the signals that our body's sending us. And then also marrying like what our body is telling us with what we know, like scientifically or based on evidence about what is actually helpful for us. So, like I was just talking about earlier, I have this resistance naturally to being still, but Melody says that that's where our power resides, and it's true. If we can sit with ourselves, we can really just start to tap into our power.
Yeah, that's so true too, because I feel like a lot of the people that, or a lot of the guests on this show have trouble sitting still, and like this yoga is like their superpower. It's like it's their tool, and that's my tool. It's like we are not. A lot of us are not yoga teachers. Like myself, I'm a yoga teacher, and a lot of the guests are yoga teachers, but they do other things too, and they live other lives like off the mat. And I think a big part of that is like that, realizing that these tools help us not just the 60 minutes or whatever time we're on the mat. And it's like taking it off the mat, and we deal with the same things that everybody else deals with. It's just we found this tool that really helps us kind of balance and get in check. And it's not perfect. Like, I mean, every day is different and every day is a new battle. And yeah, it's what makes it fun. And something you mentioned about visualization was really cool too, because that's another big part of the show. It's like a different form of kind of like this meditation. And I know as a runner myself, I used to have this book that I probably could find. It's probably laying around somewhere, where I'd used to write down all my goals for like the upcoming races, and I visualize them even in like the workouts, like between reps. I would visualize like coming around the final bend of the track, or the cross country race coming around like the final like straight away. And it was such a big part, and I didn't realize what I was doing at the time in like high school running, and then even in college running, I didn't realize like how powerful it was. I just realized like, okay, this is working for me now. And yeah, so it's that was super interesting. And maybe we could kind of just talk about that a little bit further. Like, how do you kind of walk through your students in terms of this visualization, or what techniques do you use?
Yeah, that really varies by what situation we're in. But in the book, we have an example that's led by melody. And that's basically like a race preparation visualization. And for some of my adult athletes, maybe it's something they're just working on having more confidence or facing the fear of running in the forest alone, if they're super scared of cougars or something. So I think these exercises can be tailored for whatever an athlete or a human needs, and that's why they're so awesome, because they're so flexible. But the one in the book, we talk about getting yourself into a nice relaxed state. So Melody has some breathing exercises, and then having athletes lie down on the ground or sit in a comfortable position, and then, just like you said, visualize the course or the track. Visualize what that experience will feel like in your body. What are the senses? What are you hearing? What are you feeling? What are you smelling? What are you seeing? And then running through different scenarios in that environment. So if you get spiked, or you fall down, or you get elbowed, or you fall, there's all these different things that can happen, but you can visualize yourself having power, having confidence, responding quickly. And so whatever that like success or strength or confidence looks like for an athlete, you can practice. And so I will often have athletes, or recommend that athletes either write that down, like what they want their race to go like, or how it might, like what scenario they're trying to tackle, and then consider all the possibilities, because anything's possible and you just want to bring your best self to that situation. And so there's lots of different, factors that can play in there. But a big one for me in high school was, like you were saying, visualizing coming around that final turn. A big one for me was like 300 meters to go. I really thrived on the kick, but then my junior year, I got beat at the city championships. Someone passed me at about that mark, and I just fell apart. And that was the first time that had happened. So from then on out, my coach worked with me to think about how I will feel, how I will respond when I get to that mark. And it totally helped me like refine my kick, which was super helpful. But I think the biggest thing about these visualizations or mindfulness exercises, especially when it comes to sports and performance, is that it's not just about the external result. It's also about how it's a practice. It's about your progress. It's about how you respond. And it's just an experiment. So like, if you don't win, you don't win. You'll race another day. You can't be the best in the world always. So I think that's why it's a good practice, is because you learn to just deal with what life throws you and do the best that you can and be happy with that. Like, walk off the track or the course proud of yourself.
Yeah, that's super powerful kind of like take on this too. It's like you with visualization, you could build up all this, like we were speaking about, like this undue pressure, and um, but at the same time, it's like exactly what you just said. But in terms of like those visualization techniques, I think that's um, I like how you kind of broke it down even further, and kind of how you're like teaching it to your athletes. And of course, these techniques work for not just athletes, these work for anything. Like anytime you have to perform, or anytime you have to do something, like even maybe this conversation, like we could have this morning, imagine it like going well or something like that, and having like a positive. I wish I did. Next time I will, I promise. But yeah, and like different scenarios happening. I think that was maybe something that I missed in my own practice, but something you mentioned, which um, was like this emotional, like how you're gonna feel. I think that was super powerful. And when I added that in during my running career, and like how I was feeling. Sometimes I put like even like a music, and I played the song over and over again. Or I imagined sometimes even in workouts like that I was one of the professional runners that I looked up to and I strive to be like. And all those little things kind of helped me. Yeah, and in terms of body image, I know you mentioned body image. So, like, this is kind of back to what you were saying before. And I think that's really important. And I know you write about it a lot. And it's not just for female runners. So, everybody that's listening to this, because I know myself as like a college runner, I got to college, you're kind of living on your own. There's so much stimulus. And it's like, at the time, like, I know myself, it was detrimental to my running career, is that, um, I had this like push and pull of wanting to kind of put on muscle. I was a skinny runner guy, and and it helped me be fast. But what was good for my performance was, of course, when you're a distance runner, every pound counts, and that kind of gets to your head. But at the same time, as someone myself who maybe wanted to put on some muscle and like look older or look like bigger in that terms, like, I think everybody deals with this stuff, and it was detrimental to my running career. And I kind of wish that I just had the self-confidence during that time to just be like, I'm okay how I am, and you know what, this is my purpose, like running fast. Because it's like, on one end of the thing, my goals weren't congruent. It's like, one goal is to run really fast and be my best, and do it for my team. And then other times it was like this self-confidence of like, I have to be big, I have to be muscular, because that's what a man is, what's what like masculinity is. um but I mean, yeah, we could actually just jump onto one of the questions that I had about one of your particular articles, which was this idea. So this article, and I'll link to all these articles in the show notes so people could follow along or check them out after. But so the first article is called "Female Athletes Face Crazy Expectations. Um, they can be overcome. We still hear that to win or to be worthy, we must be thin, and don't dare bring up your period, but trying to fit this projected image has serious consequences." So, this was an article you wrote for the New York Times, and this is a quote from it. So, it says, "We still hear that to win or to be worthy, we must be thin. In this niche, society writ large reverberates to telling us, be perfect, be beautiful, be feminine, and don't dare bring up your period. Trying to fit this projected image has serious consequences. Girls in particular face undue stress around puberty when body size, hormones, and muscle strength change. An estimated 13% to 41% of adolescent female athletes exhibit disordered eating, such as inadequate fueling, unleashes, and you just kind of go on about like particular things that could happen due to this. And the quote is from your article. And I'd agree that this portrayal of be perfect, be beautiful, be feminine is really portrayed anytime. Like, anytime you open up social media, a TV show, a movie, an advertisement, there's really no escaping it. And as we spoke, like, these concepts go beyond just running. I mean, look at the yoga community, look at any other sport, or really anything in life. And but we were just speaking about in men too. It's like this idea of be perfect, be successful, be masculine, or whatever it is. So, in your opinion, what is it that we could do to kind of overcome? Is it like self-reflection, awareness?
That's a great question. And I think it's a big question because the reason that everybody on the planet, every human faces these pressures is because they're baked into our society. So these, like, whoever holds the power in a society or a culture dictates what success looks like, what an athlete looks like, what a human looks like. And it's a very narrow standard that we've set for ourselves, right? And a lot of this is rooted in cis hetero patriarchy and white culture as well. And so there's just like tiny sliver of the world that has outsized power and defines this is what success looks like. And so in our society, everybody is trying to fit these super narrow standards. But then we have the different pressures within, whatever corner of society you're in yoga and, running. And so these pressures are coming at people from all different angles. And so I think the minute you start opening your eyes and asking who's telling me what like I should look like, who's telling me that I need to eat a certain way, who's telling me that I need to do a certain thing or put appearance first. And so there's this huge, really big overarching belief system that influences all of these, but then it gets perpetrated and spread through just people that adopt these ideas because that's what they see around them. Like my parents and my older relatives, they were taught certain things. And so you take that at face value. And so in running specifically, there's coaches that will say things that they don't necessarily realize are harmful because that's just what they were taught. It was like that quote unquote, you need to be thin to run fast. And while there is some truth to physics, the body is more regulated by metabolism. And calories in, calories out, and lighter is faster are fallacies, and it's lazy coaching. And so it's something that everyone involved in sport, as a gatekeeper, needs to start rethinking. But when it comes to these issues for each individual, that's one reason that Melody and I wrote the book speaking directly to young girls. And again, I think that more than just young girls can get something valuable out of this, but we wanted to speak directly to an individual so that she has the tools that she needs or the tips that she needs to start figuring out what's right for her and discerning all this other outside noise. If I would have felt more confident in my own skin or felt more hopeful about my potential in my own body, and not being focused on like how I needed to change in order to get a certain place or be deemed successful or whatever, I think I would have avoided a lot of harmful traps. And so that's why we really, really want each human to listen to their bodies, their minds, their hearts, and find what's right for them in that moment, wherever they are.
Mm. Yeah, I think that last thing you said, like listen to your body and in this moment too, because like every time or every day is different, every moment is different, every moment is unique. There's no ordinary moments, and yeah, I think that's super powerful. And kind of just to be transparent and go off the example of myself again during my running career, I know like on the guy side of things, there was even some like eating disorders, not maybe as severe, but I know a lot of us were just like kind of watching like everything. Like we were just trying to be the best in whatever it took. If I was eating one less slice of pizza at like, I remember at like when we used to have like running parties and we're just like, I'm not going to eat that extra one because we're trying to like every pound counts. And like we're high school, we're growing. And I know that was like something that was super, like it just kind of clicked in my mind right now. I was kind of remembering back and it was kind of portrayed like as like these old time running coaches, and they really pushed like, yeah, this is what a runner is. And yeah, and the success, the back on the success for me maybe in college looked like, oh, everyone's like putting on all this muscle, right? And that's what success looked like. So it's like, oh, I'm going to strive to be that. And it's funny now because it's like exactly what we were just mentioned before, which is like I could care less. I'm like, I
Yeah.
like being skinny. Like I could do so
Yeah.
many things now. It's like I feel good running. I could hike. I could surf. I could do whatever you want. I'm like, this feels great. I remember as soon as I stopped running, I'm like, I'm gonna lift and like put on all this muscle because like it was the outward appearance, and I think so many people deal with that. And like I'm only speaking about kind of the maybe my side of things because that's what I'm aware of. But I know everybody listening is like, oh yeah, that's why I did this, and like kind of as you grow older, but it's like it doesn't have to be that way with time and like kind of getting caught in these traps. Like it could be like you, if somebody was like yourself and wrote about these things and kind of shared these things, it could be super helpful and really like change people's lives for the better. So yeah, thanks for putting all this stuff out there. I appreciate this, and everyone listening. If like I said, these articles will be listed in the show notes. Before I jump on to the next article, did you have anything to say before I go on another tangent?
I would just say I I think one reason that I'm able to write about these things is because there are people in every corner of the world trying to share new information So there's all these researchers, there's other writers, there are coaches, there are people that are doing really hard work in their own little worlds and communities. And the more each one of them speaks up, the more I have courage to speak up, the more another person has courage to speak up. And so it's really awesome to see the collective power and see what can happen when we're collaborating and really growing, together. So it feels like a movement to me. We're seeing this in running, we're seeing this in gymnastics. People are calling out horrible behavior there, etc. And so I think it's just a really exciting, or it gives me a lot of hope to see like how we can make some positive changes.
Awesome. Yeah. And people like yourself are kind of putting it out there. I know like the yoga community, that movie with Bikram came out.
Mm-hmm.
That was like another big one. I know like the gymnastics one, I don't remember what it's called, but I know there was a documentary that came out too. So yeah, no, it's great that it's kind of like bringing light to some of the things and kind of finding the truth behind it and using social media for the good. So, I mean, that's a optimistic viewpoint on it. And then, so another article, actually, it's two articles are kind of related to this question. So the first article is 4 things every coach, parent, and female athlete should know about running in puberty. And the second article, which this quotes from, is called "The Top 3 Questions Runner Girls Ask: Answers to the questions that their parents have been searching for." So this quote states, "Too often I hear stories about unhealthy running experiences and undue pressure, whether they're figuring out how to navigate puberty and periods or expected to run faster and faster with every race. Runner girls hear myths and encounter taboos, such as misguided ideas can such misguided ideas can point runners in the wrong direction." So this quote's from your article, and like I said, being a distance runner myself, and we were talking about this, it's like this, what I remember is like this undue pressure. It's not just butterflies in your stomach. It's like way more than that. And yeah, and if there's people kind of like yourself at the time, I guess, and like I said, maybe I just wasn't listening, or maybe it's just people need to hear it more than once. But like no one like yourself kind of came around to me and told me otherwise, in terms of and one of the major reasons that I had this undue pressure was kind of like this, what you said, whereas like you're constantly have this pressure to run faster and faster and faster each time, and like, and that's a lot of pressure on somebody so young, or really of any age. And besides constant injury, kind of the reason that I ended up quitting my senior year of college and giving up my scholarship was to kind of liberate myself from this constant pressure and heal my body and heal my mind, and just give myself like this break that I haven't had for like 7 or 8 years. Because like when you have injury and on top of that, you have all this pressure, and it's this idea that like it's almost impossible to run faster because you just can't heal yourself. And yeah, so in terms of one alternative solution for my energy that kind of plagued my body is, and this constant internal pressures at this point in my running career, it was just by chance, like many others, like we said, I just found yoga, and that's kind of led me down my journey. Taught me and continues to teach me about awareness, self-reflection, being present, realizing that each moment is unique, and other superpowers to calm my body and mind. So I know a lot of the audience can relate with that in terms of the pressure, maybe in terms of the physical side of yoga and how they kind of found yoga by chance. So what are some things that you maybe tell your athletes or use yourself about this like undue pressure?
Yeah, I think I encourage people to continually reevaluate their why or their motivation. Because when we are motivated by external pressure or other people's expectations of some external outcome, um, then we're chasing something that's not coming from within us. So there's a difference between commitment and obligation, I think. Like, are we choosing to go after this? Are we actively seeking um, progress, or are we just chasing a title? Are we chasing a PR? And really examining why. And I think like this is applicable in running because people are always trying to set personal records, aka PRs, or trying to win. And in yoga too, I think a lot of teachers that I've taken classes with have talked about, knowing that the end point in a given pose will be different on a different day. But just because you did something one time, there's this expectation that you're going to do it again or every time from here on out. And that's just not an accurate like representation of life, like that's just not how things work. And so I think it's when I'm working with athletes, I just want them to tune in to why they're choosing a certain activity, why they're choosing a certain goal, and realizing like zooming out to the big picture and realizing that this is about their journey. No one else is doing what they're doing. No one else is living in their body. No one else is living in their skin. And while we can have collective action and community and teammates and help each other and have similar experiences, this is about them. And so I really think that sometimes external pressure can be a good motivator, sure, to get you out the door, get you competitive, get you trying new things, but it's not the be all end all. It's not the only reason that we run. It's not the only reason that we practice yoga. And so I think a lot of us, myself included, just need to remember that time and time again and revisit, kind of give ourselves a little review and check in with like why we are so committed to what we're committed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And are you still a competitive runner? Are you still running at like a competitive level? I know you mentioned you did some ultras.
I don't know if I'd call myself competitive. After college, I was more competitive. I was running on the track and the roads, and I was vying for an Olympic trials marathon qualifier. But now I'm just really enjoying the trails. I do races. Obviously, there's not many this year. I was hoping to run my first 50-mile race, but that was canceled. And I feel so grateful that I'm at that point, like at this point in my running career for this crazy year, because I still train, I still run, I still try to push my limits. But it's, I'm not trying to break any world records. And I'm
Okay, so
definitely
not
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 going
as
to.
much undue pressure. You have undue pressure in other aspects of your life, maybe your writing or
Totally. Yeah.
whatnot. And for
Yeah.
everybody listening who's not a runner, I think runners have this like unique pressure on them because it's a lot of them, pretty much everyone, unless you're like a shorter distance runner. I mean, you go through cross country season, then it's winter track, then it's spring track, and it's summer training, or sometimes people even do like some summer races. Like I know I competed in lifeguard tournaments. So there's like 2 weeks out of the whole year for most runners that are totally off, that you're not running. And out of those 2 weeks, usually 1 week's active recovery. So it's really like 1 week that you're like not running. And otherwise, every day you're performing. Every Sunday morning's that long run. And you really don't get it. I mean, I think the only other sport that's similar is maybe swimming in terms of like this pressure. I think we have it a little easier because we could talk to our friends and we're not stuck in this little like pool looking at the bottom of the pool, like, um, yeah, having our hands turn into prunes. And so that was like, I was friends with some of the swimmers in college. And I was like, that's the one sport that like, okay, I'll say it's a little harder. Or in terms
Yeah.
of like it's a little mentally like challenging. But yeah, so just for everyone listening, that's some clarification. But Article 4 is running issues with Elizabeth Carey, yourself, overwhelmed, question mark. So first, I love the way you wrote this article. It's very like interactive, and I like that because that's kind of like what we're trying to do with this show, where we have this episode where it's to learn, to inspire, to maybe rethink things that were like thought processes, and to learn like how somebody else is living their life as a secret yogi and what tools they're using. And there's so many out there, and that's what's great. Like I talk about yourself, who's a runner, who's a writer, and you're unique to somebody who may be. We talked to Rob King. He's a free diver. like a five-time world champion free diver. Like his things are totally unique. I'd love to get some like real like entrepreneurs on the show and some artists, and there's just so many modalities out there to really help us. So that's kind of going off topic, but I love the way you wrote this article, because in this we match every for everybody that's maybe new to the show, you'll kind of notice that every interview is matched with an interactive episode to kind of help you practice and stay consistent in your practice. And you kind of wrote this article very interactive. And so kind of you talk about coping, and can we talk maybe a little bit more about coping and the different strategies either you recommend or use to overcome stress?
Totally. I think this is a hot topic for this year because this year has been bonkers and necessary. But I think I've been talking a lot more about this in particular because some runners who I work with haven't been able to go about things as normal. And so if you get hurt, if your season is altered, if a race is canceled, if you can't go outside, if you get sick and you can't exercise, that's often when runners and other active people realize how they've been using exercise as a coping mechanism, which is great because it offers stress relief, but it should not be the only answer. And for myself as a compulsive exerciser, that was my sole coping mechanism. And that meant that I wasn't very resilient because if I couldn't work out, I would freak out. I'd get anxious, I'd get worried. It was a whole sort of host of issues. And so I think there are so many different coping mechanisms that people can try. And it's another example of where you can experiment with your own experience and try some different things and see what works for you. Some other coping mechanisms, like for me specifically, include journaling, meditating, yoga, that breath work. But there are so many different things that an athlete can tap into. If it's something like they need to change their environment, if they're feeling super anxious and are feeling kind of trapped, trying things that stimulate different senses and get them back into their body instead of worrying beyond that. And so like another big thing that I think a lot of, especially high school athletes, and I mean adults too, are missing right now is the social coping that they get from workouts. So whether it's in the yoga studio before or after a class, whether it's talking with someone on a run, we're not having that human interaction. And so we're right now, to cope, you have to take an extra step to try and connect with someone, whether that's hopping on a Zoom call or texting someone that you haven't heard from in a while. Just talking to someone else can lighten your load. And I think that's something that we just have to more purposely seek right now. But in that article, I list some others. There's lots of great insights from experts like mental health counselors and therapists. And there's lots of options out there. So I just would say to those who use exercise as their only method of coping, now's a good time to try some other forms of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of like on the layers of I guess practices from like exercise is a great way to and it's a great healthy practice. And if you're going to have any type of coping mechanism, exercising is definitely a great one. But it is a sort of, and we discussed about this on the show, which kind of like the layers before, which is like exercise is almost a distraction method. And it's funny how you kind of describe yourself, because it's exactly like myself. Like I need, like I almost feel like I need it, and like I'm learning how to like kind of take myself down these tiers where it's like this exercise or like going for a run or doing some type of like physical intense exercise is at the top. And it's almost a distraction method, but it does feel good. It's a healthy practice. But then you go to more subtler practice, which is like a breathing practice. Then you go to the art of non-doing, which is like as subtle as it gets, which is like a meditation. And it kind of goes, take yourself down. But like if anyone needs to start somewhere, start with something that's start at the top. Like, right, if you're not doing the basic things of exercising, even if it's just going for a walk, start there. Kind of, okay, now I've got that down. now take it down, like breathing. And that's kind of how I think about it. And maybe people think about it differently, but that's kind of how what helps me. So like if I feel like I can't meditate, okay, let me take a step back, breathing. And breathing is broken down into like intense and like subtle practices. Okay. It's like if I even can't do that, then it's like go for a run. Okay, get my mind calm down, like go for breathing. But yeah, I mean, I love the idea, and I want to kind of talk about that a little bit more about like journaling. But you mentioned like breath work, meditation, change your environment. So that's something that's super. It was super important since I've been kind of solely stuck like in this little apartment, like working from home for so many um, months now, and I if anyone hasn't tried like is farm therapy, like living in a big city, like we call it like farm therapy. I don't know, we've talked about it before, but it's like um it's just it's getting out in nature. If you're not out in nature, and just like detaching from like electronics is so great. But also you mentioned about like social coping, and I think everybody who's been an athlete, or even like even maybe in a work environment now is at home, like that team aspect is just what most people miss. I know that I miss that most about running. Probably it's like being out in the woods, running, talking with your friends, and like really connecting. So like maybe try something like retreats, or maybe you have some recommendations in terms of that, like to get some
Yeah.
social coping in.
Yeah, I think like everything looks a little different all across the world right now, so it's hard to know like what the
True. Yeah.
options are for people. But like even just hopping on a call, like my friends, these women that I trail run with here in Seattle, we normally would run together 1 to 3 times a week, off and on. And I totally missed that, but I didn't realize how much I missed that until one of the women planned a book club, and she wanted to start talking about more about anti-racist issues, and so she suggested this book, and she's like, I'd love to process this book with y'all, can we get together? And so we just got on a Zoom call, and even that little bit, it was screen time, which sucks, but even that little bit of connection made me feel so much better. And so even if you're stuck at home, just finding a way to connect with someone, whether you're FaceTiming, whether you're talking on the phone, like old fashioned, like we used to, it's so powerful just to connect with another human. And it takes you out of whatever rut you're in. And no, it won't solve all your problems, but it will make you feel a heck of a lot better and make you feel connected. And I think that's the value. So it can be super simple. I mean, I love the idea of a retreat. Like, oh, I would love to go, do something like that right now. This whole summer, my co-author Melody and I were supposed to be at different running camps, and I'm really missing that because they were all canceled. But even still, being able to connect with some of the coaches that I'd normally be standing around a campfire with, whether we're texting, whether we're just hopping on a call, has been so nice. So a little bit goes a long way, and it doesn't have to be complicated or expensive, which is a great thing.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And just also being out in nature, like sitting around a campfire, is just like it feels nice. Like I got to do a little bit this weekend. We did some it was like a small group for training for this source point at Securo. It's like in upstate New York, and they have this 120 something acres and these tents, and everyone got like tested before. So like we had this small group, and we were able to, my girlfriend was doing her training in source point therapy, and I was just along for the journey with my cat Buddha, and we were going hiking, and it was just so nice. There's no service. Like it felt like a team again, because like everyone's like hanging out, and like around the campfire eating together. I think eating together was one thing too that's like big, like eating lunch together. Even
Mm-hmm.
when everyone goes back to say the office or wherever their camps are opened next year, I think like that community, whatever way you could get it. But for right now, I mean, like Zoom calls and phone calls and FaceTime, and like getting on for that is like cool. Maybe like treadmill run, like Zoom calls.
Yeah, I
Maybe.
feel so lucky. I've been able to have some like distanced runs with some friends on trails or roads if it's not too busy. And that is such a lift, not only because you're in the forest getting nature and but you're just chatting with someone, and it's so, so nice. It's something that I really miss, but I've been able to enjoy off and on throughout the pandemic, which has been an amazing treat.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. And then, as for your book, so your book, Girls Running, All You Need to Strive, Thrive, and Run Your Best. I love the title. It just kind of like flows off the tongue every time I say it. It's great. Um, yeah. Is there anything that you kind of want to discuss? I know you said like there's like journaling prompts and you're going to share one for the interactive practice. Is there anything like particularly in that book, like now knowing the audience, that you would like to kind of share as like an overarching message, or like maybe something you learned while writing it?
Yeah, well, I learned a ton. And in a nutshell, the book is designed to be a comprehensive guide for young athletes, with everything that they need to know for having a lifelong journey with running if they so choose. But the cool thing that was unexpected has been hearing how adults, be them parents or coaches or just adult runners, have been finding lessons in it as well. And as I mentioned earlier, we really want to empower athletes to kind of create their own journey. But there are people that are further along in life and further along in their athletic experience that have been able to learn things. And that makes me so happy. I think Melody and I are just stoked that people are enjoying takeaways. And so that's, yeah, it just feels like an incredible gift to be able to share that with people and help them just fully realize their own potential.
Yeah, definitely. And as for like, I give credit to anybody who is able to compile a book. And as yourself, a writer, you said journalism is like one of your coping mechanisms for stress, because it's um it's so powerful in terms of like taking your monkey mind, or however you call it, and like peeling away these layers and thoughts and being able to put them into the written word. Like it's easy to kind of think about it and like, oh, that makes sense, right? And that's running through your head. But as soon as you put that pen to paper or start typing, it's like, wow, like that's totally jumbled, and like you have to make it clear and concise. Um, yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about like journaling in terms of like maybe like a self reflection, or how like we could all utilize it and start writing to kind of clear our thoughts?
Definitely. And we have a really applicable lesson in the book. It's in the mindset chapter where we're talking about mental health and mental training. And I think, to back up a little bit, everybody thinks about writing. If you don't do it professionally, if you don't do it frequently, you think about it kind of like a report. And that's where we get to the chance to take off that hat and remove those external expectations. Like when we're talking about journaling, when we're talking about free writing, we're talking about wild writing, writing as a coping mechanism or a tool for getting in touch with yourself. It is not for publication. It is not supposed to be perfect. Doesn't matter what the grammar is, doesn't matter what the spelling is. It's just for you, and it's a practice like any other. So I'm a huge fan of like free and wild writing where you just go. You don't stop your pen. You set, maybe you set a timer for a minute and you just free write. But in the book, we have an example called a tantrum journal. And that's like if you're just feeling super overwhelmed and you don't even know where to start, just take a piece of paper and write everything on your mind down. You can scribble, you can, if you're not quite sure, you can just write what you're feeling. And just, it's like a brain dump. And it's such a nice relief to get it out. And then you can take a breath, look at it, and kind of sort yourself and figure out maybe is there like, did that make me feel better? Am I like, is this a coping mechanism in itself? Has it been helpful for me? Or you can go a little bit further and look at that and just give yourself some reflection and think, what can I do to make one of these things just a little bit better? Like if it says I'm tired, okay, can I take a 5-minute cat nap? Or if it says you're feeling super stressed or you have a project due or whatever, helping yourself find a way, find a tool, find a way through that stress. And I think that's what writing can do. It can be a brain dump. It can be an exploration. It can be fun. It doesn't have to be something that you put out in the world, and it certainly does not have to be impeccable.
Mhm. Yeah. No, yeah, thanks for sharing that. I know I actually bought a notebook the couple months ago. I feel like I have all these thoughts, and I was just like, I'm going to carry around this notebook everywhere, kind of write down my thoughts. I feel like I'm always coming up with these ideas and just write them down. And yeah, you really like self reflection is a huge part of a yoga practice. They teach that in traditional yoga, really, no matter what lineage you're practicing, and simply like yeah, writing down your thoughts, and or like you mentioned, like I got to look more into like kind of like free writing and stuff that you're talking about, but it's really powerful. And to so I give you credit as a runner and writer. But yeah, so what's next for you? And yeah, and where can people kind of find you, like, and what are you working on right now?
That's a great question. I feel like I am firing on all cylinders in some ways. But I have really been enjoying, both Melody and I have been really enjoying talking with people about the book and working with coaches specifically. So we're doing some speaking things like conferences virtually. I am about to do a workshop for coaches, another one in October. And I'm also continuing to write my like column for Stat and other stories as well, which is just fun because there's no shortage of things that need to be written about. But you can follow along with my work online. My website is elizabethwcarey.com, and I'm on Twitter and Instagram as well at Elizabeth W. Carey. But I love hearing feedback. I love hearing whether it's good, bad, or ugly. So I love hearing from readers. So people can reach out to my website or social. It's great to hear what questions people have or what feedback they have. I love that.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'll link to that in the show notes below for everyone who wants to check out some of your work and your book. I love what you and Melody are putting out into the world. So yeah, definitely if it interests you or gift it to somebody who's a runner. And yeah, I think it's one of those guidebooks that you kind of just keep around. So I appreciate that. And I love hearing your life as a secret yogi. And for everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And yeah, thanks so much for your time. And yeah, no, I really appreciate it.
Likewise. Thanks so much.